What is good, demons? Reacting to another video talking about fascism, PF Jung, and Pisco. I think this debate is interesting and it highlights a very probably necessary conversation for the average American to listen and see why people call certain people fascists. I saw a little bit and I really dislike this. Sometimes this approach to centrism is hollow to me, and I don't. I consider myself a centrist, but I don't believe in nuanced centrism when it doesn't deserve it. Like just because two sides are saying something, that doesn't mean both sides have equal value in terms of the things that they're saying. And the easiest example you can talk about is talking about the complaints from slave owners and slaves. They both have the same value? Of course not. So let's react to this. Shout out.
I believe he was.
You do believe Charlie Kirk was a fascist?
I do.
Can you be a fascist and a good person?
That's a complicated question. I think the answer is
We live in complicated
Yes.
times, Pisco.
so. Like Oskar Schindler was a Nazi, and I take whether you're a good person to be some sort of composite of all the things you have done in the past, and so I think it's possible for there to be good fascists, but it's hard.
I disagree. I think no, you can't be a good person and a fascist. I don't think that's possible. I don't think you could be a good person or a Nazi. Now you can be a previous bad person and then become good after you realize the wrongs of your past actions. Right? It's the same principle as you know Christianity, for example, where the teachings of Christianity believes in the idea of forgiveness and everybody can be forgiven for the most part. Yeah. In the eyes of Jesus, literally everybody can be forgiven. So I think that's important to note. But if you are currently the thing, no, I don't think you could be a good person.
Do you have roughly the same opinion on fascism as you do communism?
What do you mean by that?
Do you regard both as bad?
Yes.
Interesting. All right, so Charlie Kirk's a fascist. Um, Interesting. I guess this is part of my issue. Part of the part of my issue is the term gets thrown around so much, and it describes, I don't know, 40% of the country, let's say, because that's probably the number of people that agree with Charlie Kirk, to a significant enough extent that he would be called a fascist. What particularly what has Charlie Kirk said that would make him be a fascist, you think?
I think the key indicators to me are, one, his support for.
I do think. Wow, Mari DiMaccardo scored a touchdown. Did he? Really? Bro, I'm sorry. Sorry, you guys. Oh, did he release the ball before he crossed the end zone? Oh, that's very annoying. That's very annoying. I'm not gonna lie. But if you agree with Charlie Kirk or if you agree with Donald Trump's administration, are you a fascist? It's really tough because just because you are aligned with someone doesn't necessarily make you a fascist. The tough thing about this is MAGA is like so uneducated. Like most of them do not know how the government works. Most of them do not understand what is taking place in terms of the things that are being advocated for and why they're harmful. A lot of them are fed a very skewed vision of the Donald Trump administration. So a lot of them don't even think what he's doing is fascist. So if you don't think what he's doing is fascist, then I can't call you a fascist. You're not a fascist. You just have a skewed understanding, maybe a biased understanding that's preventing you from looking at things objectively. So in a situation like this, it's not as cutthroat as, like, for example, like owning slaves. And even owning slaves is a terrible thing, 100%. But if you grew up in a culture, nah, I can't even excuse that. It's a terrible thing. You can look at it as like, oh, you're owning human beings, you're treating them like shit. Like, if you support that practice, then there's really nothing for me to say. And this type, the governmental style, it's not as cutthroat. It's not like he is a one-to-one example of a fascist regime. He's just moving towards a regime under an American lens that is particularly fascist. And they're going to talk about certain things that Charlie Kirk has advocated for, because I think it's a perfect, reasonable way to articulate Charlie Kirk and why he's a fascist, because not only does he support Trump, I do think if he was in the same shoes as Trump, he would commit similar actions as Trump, which is fascist action. So they're about to talk about it in a second.
Authoritarian government. He tried to overturn a free and fair election. He supported the actions of Trump, who I think operates as a fascist. So therefore, he's providing ideological support of and devotion to a leader who I take to be fascist, given his policies and given what he wants to see. I think that he embodies a lot of the archetypes that I've described, including ultra-conservatism, ultra-nationalism, believing in some of this, conspiratorial myth-making that I talked about. And yeah, so I think that he aligns closely, not perfectly, no one's going to be perfect, with the kind of archetype that I've described. And, can I push you a little bit? So my question for you is, do you agree that fascism is bad and communism is bad?
Well, not if it...
Is communism bad, yes or no?
Well, hold on. If we're defining... If Charlie Kirk is a fascist, then fascism is clearly not as bad as I would have thought.
Well, I guess I'll just ask the question clean. I'll ask the question.
And this is what disappoints me for people like PF, is that he's trying so hard to be nuanced. He is trying so hard to not completely capitulate to the idea of what is going wrong with the MAGA administration. He's trying so hard to find the good in right-wing actors. And if you have to try that hard, then at that point, it's not worth trying. The thing is, Charlie Kirk is an individual that also wants to play a character. So he can't say things that are what's the word I'm looking? Very transparently fascist. That's the word I'm looking for. I am not interested in giving political content creators the excuse that I give average citizens of America, because a lot of them are too busy to really pay attention to the nuance of politics. But if your job, if you're getting monetary gain, if you do content consistently about the current political landscape, and you don't understand the context that shapes how a person is or isn't, then I do think you're at fault, because you're not truly doing your job correctly at that point.
Is communism bad?
Communism
yes, by and large, I would say.
Is fascism bad?
Yes, by and large.
Okay, but you're saying
that I strongly agree with. Well, but hold on, depend, because again, so like, is Bernie Sanders a communist?
I don't think so.
Okay, but if someone said, I wonder if Ben Shapiro would say if Bernie Sanders is a communist. Probably. He's probably said something like that, right? We don't know. But
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Sure. If I was talking to a conservative commentator and he said Bernie Sanders is an example of a communist, what about, hold on, Zohran Mamdani, is he a communist?
No, these people aren't communists. You can argue they're socialists, but they're not communists. And At the very least, you can say they're socialist, social democrats. There is a distinguishable difference. But a socialist, are they bad? I'd have to really think about that.
Not what I take to be communist. No.
Okay, I know for a fact there's people who call Zoran a communist.
There are people, but I want to separate if there are people who call him that and whether I think they are. And so when you ask me, is communism bad? I have a notion of communism in my head, and I'm applying that. It's not necessarily.
Yeah, so this is what I would precisely point to as the issue, is people get called fascist or communists across the board by different people, and all these words mean different things. And so...
Did how I describe fascism ring true to you or not?
Did it ring true to me?
Or do you agree?
So
is that what you understand a fascist to be, or something approaching that?
Is Adolf Hitler...
All right, I just wanted to look at this real quick. How is communism different from socialism? Let's look at it. Exactly how communism differs from socialism has long been a matter of debate. Karl Marx used the terms interchangeably. For many, however, the difference can be seen in the two phases of communism as outlined by Marx. The first is a traditional system, which the working class controls the government and economy, yet still pays people according to how long, hard, or well they work. Capitalism and private property exist, though to a limited degree. This phase is widely regarded as socialism. However, Marx fully realized communism. Society has no class divisions or government or personal property. The production and distribution of goods is based upon the principle from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. So socialism and communism are very different. Socialism government won't work, but socialism at the very least allows for the opportunity of capitalism to mix with it. Communism is full, all right, everything is owned by the people. And obviously that doesn't work. And it requires a overarching government to provide that power, which the government will take control of everything. So communism is 100% worse. And communism is bad. Socialism is tough. It depends on like where you want to draw your lines in terms of how far you want to go. There's no proven model of socialism working, but there is a level of like socialist principles that can be adopted by capitalism, free market economy, which America has done in several circumstances, and what Scandinavian countries do. They have a capitalist economy, but they have certain like social principles. So that's why I'm like, socialism, I wouldn't go like all bad, no. But communism, yes.
Hitler would be a fascist, obviously.
Yeah,
the Nazis would be fascist ideology.
Yes. Is there a reason you didn't want to answer my question? So I asked you a question about my definition I provided, which was, do you think that my definition aligns with what you take a fascist to be? We can go through examples if you want, but I'm just curious. Is there a reason?
We're in lawyer mode here. Pisco, we're just talking.
I know, but I'm curious if there's a reason you didn't answer it.
What was the question? Is your description of fascism ring true?
Yeah. Do you think that tracks your meaning of it?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Because if we're going to use the same word to describe the political ideology of Hitler as Charlie Kirk, it makes the word so vague or it broadens the definition of the word so far beyond at least how I think many people see it. That it makes it difficult to like.
I'm not sure if I track that.
I agree with Pisco. Charlie Kirk has done enough where you can create a logical conclusion that he believes in fascist principles. So, PF, you're just being like ignorant in terms of like who Charlie is at this point.
Because would you agree that Kirk was an anti-communist?
Yes.
And surely you agree that Hitler was an anti-communist?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, does that broaden the term so much that we can't have an understanding of the term anti-communist just because two people who are very different?
Anti-communists, to define yourself in opposition of something is much different than defining yourself as a single thing.
Well, I'm just saying the mere fact that
parameters.
Charlie Kirk and Hitler are very different. I agree. They're very different. Doesn't mean that they're not both fascists, just any more than it means that they're not both anti-communist.
It's the same principle as like racism, for example. Can it get broadened to where it equates everything to be racist? Yes. And is the term fascist used in a broadened way of sometimes where there's more people that are included under the fascist label than they should be? Yes. However, if you can provide certain level of like examples as well as like specific actions that equate to the parameters of what it means to be a fascist, then yeah, you can be a fascist. Just because they get used a little too much, which is fair, doesn't mean that it will not apply to specific individuals.
Yeah, but the reason that people throw the words fascist around is because fascist means like if I
Trey
would say someone
Herbo's
like
doing interception.
Mehdi Hassan, like the Jubilee thing, you saw that,
Yeah.
right? The Mehdi Hassan Jubilee, right? The whole point was like, Mehdi Hassan said, well, actually, the guy self-identified as a fascist, but Mehdi Hassan was like saying, you could say I'm a fascist. The implication there, and I think it's one that most people share, is that fascist by definition equals bad.
Yes, fascists are bad. Yes. Yes. That's a terribly difficult point. I don't know. I don't know what's so difficult about that.
Like bad, immoral thing we should fight against.
Well,
And
under a peaceful society, well, fight is a very loose term. Fight politically, yes. Fight physically, no.
if like I would say Nazi
sorry, I'm
for
picking this
sure is that description. I'm assuming you wouldn't call Charlie Kirk a Nazi.
No, I wouldn't. But again, you're
I guess
talking about like why people would use a term, right? Like why
Yeah,
someone
my
might use
issue-
a term. It doesn't. Does that bear on like what you think the term means?
That's the only words ultimately mean what people think they mean. That's the only thing.
Well, I understand.
that
I agree
words
that use is meaning, but like, is the reason why one would use a word, is that in your mind defining the scope of what that word means to you? Because I hear this a lot.
Yes,
like
100%.
Okay, so
Because words mean what they mean. So if someone calls someone else a Nazi, there's an intent, there's like, fuck this guy, this guy's a bad person, we need to fight against them. The word fascism is basically used interchangeably with Nazi in the popular discourse.
Well, because Nazis are fascists. Regardless if they're interchangeable or not, Nazi or fascist. Now, just because they're interchangeable doesn't really mean much. There's a reason why people use the term fascist in particular. So
Would you agree with that?
I don't think that's used interchangeably, but I think it's often
Really?
used in conjunction, but I don't think that they're used interchangeably.
I think the average person, if someone is like, this person's a Nazi, the signal that they are receiving is essentially the same as if someone says this person's a Nazi.
And the same with the term racist.
Yeah.
But you would never
Generally.
say, well, racist is the same as fascist and Nazi because they all are conjoined together in this list of explicatives. Like I don't take just because the word is being used maybe to flatten conversation or being used as a pejorative. Like I think the word still has a meaning,
Sure.
and that
You
word
could say dummy. Yeah, you could say asshole. Like,
right. So
was Hitler an asshole? Like, yes.
So
True.
I want to be
yes, I
very
agree.
specific on this like little point that I'm
Okay,
making.
go
So
ahead.
this little
Sure.
point I'm making is why someone might invoke a word doesn't necessarily dictate its use as in the sense of how it's understood. So I might be calling you a fascist for negative reasons or because I'm bad faith or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the term fascist is like ought to be defined some other way or ought to be narrowed beyond its like technical meaning or whatever it is that you want to talk about. I think that in order to show that Kirk is or is not a fascist, it should start and end first with a semantic analysis of what you take fascist to mean and seeing if it applies to Charlie Kirk. But it seems like what we're doing here is having some theory of words that is like, well, the word fascism shouldn't include Charlie Kirk because if it did include Charlie Kirk, it would be too broad. And I just like, you could have that kind of prescriptive view about what words should mean. I just don't share that intuition.
That's fair.
I agree with Pisco. People use terms incorrectly all the time, which is fine. You can't contextualize the meaning of a term based off the flow of a conversation. But in a political conversation, especially in one with a very intentional political agenda behind what is being discussed, in the context that is taking place right now, just because a lot of people use the term wrong doesn't mean the term can't be right, especially if used in the proper context. And when it comes down to Charlie Kirk and his history and what he advocates for, I think you can definitely say that the proper context dictates he is a fascist.
That's why we're discussing this. My concern, I was thinking about what the thesis for the video would be of like, why do I even care about this, talking about like fascism and all that? It's such a internet fraught thing. And the reason is because we're at a point now where terms like fascism are thrown around so loosely and so often by people. I mean, the majority of people who are participating in the political discourse probably don't even know who Giovanni Gentile is. They probably barely know who Mussolini is. I mean, they know who Mussolini is, but they don't, know any of the history of fascism or whatever. And so, like, the problem is, I agree, and in some sense, I'm more interested in.
You don't need to know the history of a term to understand the meaning of a term. That is not something that is necessary by any means. Is it valuable to understand the history of things to create a level of context to articulate how the term has evolved and how you can apply it in different circumstances in relation to current circumstances? Sure, but is it a requirement to use the term correctly? No, not at all.
Let's talk about fascism as like the Italian concept. For example, how it differed from the Nazi concept, because it's actually kind of insane based on some of the research I've done, the degree to which the Italian fascism just straight up was at 100% odds with the Nazi biological racism, they called it. And there were many Italian fascist Jews.
Although over time, Mussolini borrowed from Hitler, and
of course, he got a little borrowed by Hitler.
Yeah. And then he started to implement Nuremberg-style laws and kicking out Jews. I think he sent a bunch of Jews to camps as well. So I agree with you that at its base, go for it.
Do you know who TK History is?
No, I don't know who that is.
He's a YouTube channel. He's like a neoliberal cuck, you could say. But he does like historical analysis of fascism and Hitler and all that. And I watched one of his videos, and he claimed that the number, I think that like the number of Jews that were killed in Italy or even handed over were basically zero, even when they were allied with Hitler. That's fact check. We can fact check.
Yeah, we can fact check.
But my point is,
wait, what is this point?
Were killed in Italy or even handed over. The number, I think that like the number of Jews that were killed in Italy or even handed over were basically zero, even when they were allied with Hitler.
The fascist regime responded equivocally to German demands, first to conquer and then to deport Jews residing in Italian. Germany refused to participate in mass murder of Jews or to prevent blah, blah.
That's fact check. We can fact check.
Yeah, we can fact check.
But my point is, what's indisputable is like the Giovanni Gentile strain of fascism explicitly rejects racism. Like Benito Mussolini. Have you seen the JREG video?
Fascism really got a bad name from the Nazis. I feel like as soon as I say that sentence, I shouldn't continue the thought. But if you just look at fascism as an ideology, there's nothing that says it has to be racist. Like, let me read you a quote, okay? I know I'm losing you. Let me read you a quote. Race, it is a feeling, not a reality. 95% at least is a feeling. Nothing will ever make me believe that biologically pure races can be shown to exist today. National pride has no need of the delirium of race. Benito Mussolini, fascism inventor, guy that invented fascism in a basement, in a garage, with just...
I have to see, like, the context of when he said this, because people's ideology, people's not ideology, but willingness to accept certain realities or dismiss certain realities in pursuit of power can change depending on how much power they acquire. If he said this while in power and doing terrible things, then that's one thing. If he said this before his kind of reinvention or invention of fascism, then that's another thing. And I also don't get the point of bringing this up. Well, what's the point of making this
to dream and a couple of guys. This is like the creator of fascism explicitly saying race is mostly God.
Because we can literally look at JD Vance, for example. JD Vance called Donald Trump Hitler, and now he's Donald Trump's biggest dick sucker, right? So you have to understand that people change depending on how much power they acquire. So that quote doesn't mean anything to me without context.
Gobbledygook. Now, this was shortly before he got little broed into being racist by Hitler, but you know, Hitler.
Bro, I just know ball. Like, I just know ball. I told you. I told you. I told you exactly. It depends on the context. Because the moment you have power, these type of principles don't mean shit.
Hitler ruined a lot of things. The pencil mustache, the Roman salute, fascism as a concept.
But like, this is my issue of like, okay, well, hold on. If we're going to discuss the ideology of fascism, well, are we going to use the Giovanni Gentile sort of ideological strain of thought, or are we going to use the Nazi one, or are we going to call Charlie Kirk this and all that? It's like there is no consensus on it, and that's a problem, and B, I guess I'm interested because, you know, it's so like, yes, but communism, it's like, yeah, communism, as I understand it, and if we're going to use it in the broadest sense, bad form of government, absurd. However, I agree with a lot of what many people who call themselves communists, or at least don't care about the label of communist, say. Like, wealth inequality is a major problem. It's sort of the basis of communism. And like, okay, talking about the third position is the Giovanni Gentile fascist or whatever. It's like, I agree a lot with people who say like, yeah, we should have a strong national identity. That I do think more that, you know, the idea of like a nation of individuals and having our conceptions of liberty and freedom be that of negative freedom rather than positive freedom, I don't think that's necessarily a good model. I do think it's good to have to instead of saying, well, like, America is a country of individuals where everyone can pursue their own ends and freedoms. It's like, no, America is one nation with a common destiny. And that is more in the mythological underlying narrative of people who, you know, fascistic in the same way that, like, I really think wealth inequality is a real problem that we need to take like strong action to address. Well, that's what communists would say. So it's like, I agree with, depending on how you define fascists and communists, a lot of these people. But the problem is like, well, Hitler's and the Nazis are called fat. And it's like that.
We can just clarify our terms, right? Like, so I hear a lot of what you're saying.
Why is he struggling so much? Just because there is one principle that someone agrees with doesn't mean their whole ideology can't be bad. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? If a slave owner believes that women should have rights, does that make the fact that he owns slaves not bad anymore just because you agree with one thing he said? No. No. Come on. It's not that difficult. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I have issue with, like, some centrists. Like, some of this nuance is not as difficult as you're making it. Nuance is valuable when it actually is warranted. Nuance is not warranted at all. We don't need to nuance the fact that an ideology is bad. If the historical context says it's bad, if the definition says it's bad, and if the applied application says it's bad, why are we trying to make it seem like it's good? Or at the very least, it's complicated.
And I agree with a lot of it. So to the extent that, like, there are things from various different ideologies that you can agree with. Like, there's some aspects maybe of the way that communists look at history that you might find it's informative. There are some aspects of public work projects that you might find even like Nazis had a good idea on public work projects, or that communists had great ideas when it came to this or that. So I agree that just incorporating some like good ideas from otherwise bad ideologies doesn't make you the thing itself. And I agree that, like, there are different strains of thought about what these terms mean, different proffered definitions. But you and I, we can just clarify what we mean by the term. And it seems like there's a desire on your part to get to like the normative, like what fascism should mean. But first, I think we should like talk about what fascism you take to mean, whether or not it should be used one way or the other. Like, what do you understand fascism to be, and does Charlie Kirk fit the bill? What you'll often hear, I think, from certain people who fight on the "is Trump a fascist?" is they'll say, well, has Trump instituted the Holocaust? Well, has Trump totally ended democracy yet? Or has Trump made any effort to throw people into camps, at least or denaturalize people? It's funny because now he is trying to do denaturalization, which was something that the Nazis did. But like they'll try to have this threshold of action that until Trump does a World War II style event, until Trump actually puts Jews in ovens, he's not a fascist. And that is just collapsing on itself. I'm assuming that you don't take one of those preposterous views. And so we can just work with whatever your notion of fascism is. And if the conclusion on your notion of what fascism is that Charlie Kirk is a fascist, then like, I'm sorry, that's just your meaning of the term fascist would include Charlie Kirk. But like, let's work with it. Let's see. So what do you
hold on. Well, because the reason I've come here is because my primary concern is with how most people use the term, right? We're in a meme war. We're in an ideological civil war, and it is made up of memes being spread around and people arguing over terms. And so the reason I am interested in this topic at all is precisely because I'm trying to gauge and understand and predict like how the language and the discourse is going to evolve, and what the implications that will have for certain ideologies gaining influence over others. Like, for example, the far right, new right, Nick Fuentes type, Curtis Yarvin, even though there's differences there and all that. Like my working theory is that because fascism is being used in a very loose way.
Wait, hang on a second.
Not by specific individuals,
but
on the whole.
I just want to say, like, there's one conversation.
This is so stupid. Terms get used incorrectly on the whole all the fucking time. Like, I just don't understand even when he explained it, he didn't really say much. I don't really understand what he was talking about there. What are you referring to? What thing are you trying to solve? I'm not coming at your intent, but I'm coming at the value of the mission that you're trying to endeavor. I just don't. I don't get
it being used in a loose way? That's a claim, right? And until, like, in order to make that claim,
I'm just taking that for granted. I don't even want to argue with that about you, because I'm observing the discourse
for the audience. But understand, in order to make the claim that fascism, the word, is being used in a loose way, you would have to have a self-standing notion of fascism by which to compare and say, well, this is not in line with the.
I disagree.
How could you say that?
I object.
Yeah.
I could just make up a word right now. Blork.
Blork.
And if Blork was used to describe such a broad array of things that had not enough commonality, then I wouldn't need to have a definition for the word Blork. I could just say the word Blork it doesn't signify anything of importance.
So when you're saying, okay, so what about the term human?
Wait, what? You don't need a definition of a term to determine the value of the term? But that doesn't even make sense either. If you create a term, then a creation of something has meaning. If you created a term for it to have no meaning, that means it does have meaning. Meaning you created a term that has the meaning of nothing. So no, your example doesn't work if we want to go down the philosophy lens. Again, you do need a definition to determine whether something's value is overutilized, underutilized, or utilized incorrectly. I completely agree with Pisco here.
The term human can be applied to every human. Is that a term that is being used too loosely?
No, because dogs are not human.
Humans
very clearly defined.
Okay,
defined by things that
dogs are not fascists. Insects are not fascists. Rocks are not fascists. So it's not being used too loosely.
Fascist?
Yeah, dogs aren't fascist. So do you understand what I'm saying? Like, in order to say something
German shepherds are a little
so loosely is a referential word. loosely is with respect to something, right? It's loose with respect to its proper meaning. It's loose with respect to.
I mean, used in a way that is not productive or not useful.
That's what I mean. I think that's the conversation that you're interested in. You're not actually interested in the conversation of, is Charlie Kirk a fascist? You're interested in the conversation of, should we call Charlie Kirk a fascist, regardless of whether he is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I agree. All right, I'm with Pisco here. I think that is exactly what he's trying to do. And I think there's something to it. It's kind of like saying the N-word, right? I had this whole conversation on Wix channel where I think utilizing the N-word has absolutely no value. And people who want to use the N-word to express their freedom of speech just want to use it to be edgy. There's no value to using it, honestly. And it's culturally embodied, but I try not. I try. My vocabulary is pretty vast. There's very few circumstances where I need to, if any. There's probably zero circumstances where I need to use that word. But words do have value, and whether or not the word is value to use here is a legitimate conversation if you want to have a productive one. But people use words willy-nilly all the time, so they don't think about the value of the things that they're saying. They just say things based off the culture that's surrounding them, the environment that's surrounding them.
Hold on. No, not regardless of whether. Hold on. I utterly, and you're a lawyer, so this is the opposite of. We have completely different lenses here that we're looking at. Of like, I don't regard. Like, I regard it as a.
Sorry, can you just give me 1 second? I had just said, and I'm going to listen to what you just said. I just said the conversation you're interested in having. Sorry, that was gross. The conversation that you're interested in having, I don't think is Charlie Kirk a fascist. It's regardless of whether or not, if Charlie Kirk is a fascist, should we call him that and should we use the term fascist? Which is like a normative conversation as opposed to like a descriptive one, which is given a set meaning, is he this? So that's what I'm seeing as your interest has to do with like, what are the effects of calling these people fascists, regardless of whether the term, as properly understood, applies to them.
No, because saying regardless of whether or not the term, I'm questioning the idea that the term can even. I'm questioning the idea that the term even has, because if we say, is it fascist to subjugate people on the basis of race?
You're trying to boil it down to specific points of what fascism is, and they've already had the conversation on what is fascism. So you have to stick with the parameters of the definition of fascism that is being used, right? Unless you have your own definition, then feel free to argue it, but you do have to stick with the parameters being used.
Not by itself, right?
Yeah, but yes, but people would point that to, like you said, it's a cluster phenomenon, right? So, it's like a DSM thing where if you check 5 out of 7 or whatever, which, I mean, I would argue that's all concepts. That's like a Wittgenstein.
I totally would agree with that it's all concepts. But like, I want to narrow the thing right there. Like, it seems that you are uninterested in discussing whether or not he is or is not a fascist.
Okay, hold on. What is your motivation in this? What are you interested in discussing?
Well, I just was here to answer your questions about executive theory, and I thought they were very interesting questions and very interesting things you brought up.
Right.
So I'm just doing that.
I know this feels very lawyerly because normally my motivations are. I suppose. Hold on. I guess I'll be clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it's like, is Charlie Kirk a fascist? It's like whether or not Charlie Kirk is a fascist depends on whether or not Hitler is a fascist, and generally it's like
What the fuck? He's trying so hard. This type of nuance pisses me off. What the fuck are we talking about? What do you mean? Whether or not Charlie Kirk is a fascist depends on whether or not Hitler is a fascist. Just define the term fascist and determine if Charlie Kirk fits under the definition of fascism. You're trying to figure out a way not to call him a fascist. I don't know why. I don't know what your appeal with Charlie Kirk is. What the fuck are we doing?
I don't like. There is a practical thing of like, I'm not going to use the same word to describe Hitler as Charlie Kirk. Now, you would point out
that's fucking retarded. What? That's so stupid. The fuck? What the fuck? That's not how words work. One person doesn't get the claim of an entire word. The fuck are we talking about? Oh my god! If I'm here to give them the benefit of the doubt, I think Pisco is correct. I think he believes that the usage of the term "fat." If I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, if I'm thinking in good faith for him, he believes that the term fascist can undermine the behavior of certain MAGA individuals, where it can get overshadowed by an overutilization to the point where it gets kind of blackpilled or it's seen like as a term that has no intrinsic value because it's overutilized, which could be the case. If I'm thinking bad faith, it's just he kind of likes Charlie Kirk and doesn't want him to be called fascist. So I don't know what it is. I don't know I'm good enough to determine, but
Like, well, what about like race? We could just say like racist or mean, even like mean.
Yeah.
Like, was Charlie Kirk mean? It's like, yeah.
yes,
Was Hitler mean? It's like,
yes.
yeah, but at a certain point,
Well, it
using
depends what we
a
mean,
same
right?
word like that.
Well, you're just overcomplicating the usage of the word mean. Was Hitler mean? Yes. Like, what nuance are you trying to find?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of
Yeah,
course.
because think about
This
this,
is my
right?
point.
If you mean interpersonally
Your
mean,
point is
by all
sucked.
accounts, Charlie Kirk was nice as hell. That's what
Well, no, but
TYT
no, okay, but he
says.
was mean
that-
to fine, but he was mean to.
That's what I
the people
mean.
he's
So
talking
like, that's what I mean. Like, if it matters what you mean, like,
yeah.
Adolf Hitler, he was someone who, on occasion, was very soft-spoken and apparently really loved his dog. Right? Was obsessed with his dog. So it depends
Yeah,
what you
okay.
mean by nice or mean in that sense. Like, it really, really does matter. Now, you could take the view is I don't want to say anything of Hitler that's true of Charlie Kirk. And some people take the view that Charlie Kirk, for example, is
I don't wanna
racist.
say of Hitler anything that's true of Charles. Like I would okay.
Some people say that Charlie Kirk is racist, right? I'm not saying that I said he's probably racist, but I put that aside.
I think everyone's probably racist.
I don't think, and maybe that's true.
Yo, you're what? Yo, I'm beginning not to like this guy, but I think he's trolling. I think he's memeing. So
I don't think that
I'm
he's
gonna
racist
give
in the
him
way
the
that
benefit of the
Hitler's
doubt.
racist.
because I actually seen some. I think PF is actually a good person. I think this level of nuance is oversaturated, but maybe the trying to protect Charlie Kirk got me a little riled up. I think it was just memeing. He was trolling. He was joking.
Or you could say something like this: like, you could make, I think, a strong argument that there are some black nationalists who are racist as fuck, or that Malcolm X said things that were super, super racist. But do I think that they're racist in the same way as Hitler, or racist in the same way as your average Southern Democrat in, the KKK
Severity of a term, yeah, that exists. I'm fine with you saying that.
era? Probably not. So there can be a great deal
Right.
of additional conversation to clarify what we mean by terms. And maybe you're frustrated that that's not happening when people just throw around the label fascist.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. But even, like we were pointing about racist, it's like that's precisely why I think the term racist has lost all its calling someone a racist means absolutely nothing nowadays.
you can just ask
because
people
the
what
term
they
has been
mean by the
used.
term, right? So like, if you're in a conversation with someone and you say like, "Hey, when you call Charlie Kirk a racist, what do you actually mean by
Wait, hold
that?"
on. Let me. You know who Alex O'Connor is?
Yeah.
I have to look into it more, but he puts forward a theory of knowledge called emotivism. Or maybe it's a
That's his, I
Moral
think,
philosophy.
I think that's his,
I don't get why he makes these conversations harder than they need be. Do people overutilize terms all the time? Of course, sure. But if you're having a conversation with the value of understanding, then you can just ask them what they mean. Yeah, just ask them what they mean. Like it really, and then just break apart whether or not that definition is working. I'm just trolling when I play Madden sometimes, bro. I just be trolling.
moral
It's a
outlook.
moral philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Where like, boo. What is this thing? It's like if you don't like Hitler, you say like boo Hitler. It's like, is boo Hitler a true statement? It's like, no, it's an expression of a sentiment. And like it's true that you might feel that way, but like you can't logically parse boo Hitler because it's just like it's an expression of emotion.
You're saying that he's taking the view that moral propositions are not truth apt.
Correct. And so I subscribe to the degree that I understand that aligns with my sort of pragmatist view of language and morality. And so that's why I have an issue with it's just like when people say someone's a fascist, they don't. The people who are calling Charlie Kirk a fascist, besides not you, the majority of the people, the majority of the discourse that is going on amongst the normies or the moderately politically engaged people, they are not calling people fascist because they meet a set of criteria. They literally mean fascist equals enemy, fascist equals bad person. It's like it's more of an emotivist expression. I believe, and I'm saying and I'm taking this is an assumption. I don't want to argue about this. I suppose we could if you disagree, but like I'm just taking that based on my observation of that is how the word is being used. And
I don't care. I'll be honest. I don't care if the average person doesn't know what the word means. I just don't care. Like, what does that mean? Like, what? Who? So what? People use words wrong all the time, right? Glaze is used incorrectly. What other terms have been bastardized? Unk is used incorrectly. Daddy. Oh my God. Daddy is used incorrectly. There's just so many terms that have been bastardized from like the average person in social media. So what? So what? Because there are circumstances when, depending on the situation, where you understand the meaning of the word. If a little kid says, like, for example, if some girl, a daughter, is saying daddy, you understand the context of why that is being used. It's genuine. Just because it's skewed because of how, it's been overutilized, I think that's fair to say. But if you want to properly contextualize the word, its value, and its meaning, you can ask a follow-up question. You can dissect or analyze the circumstances that play into why the word is being used the way it is being used, and determine based off its usage whether or not the word applies based off the scenario. So I don't get the issue. I'm gonna probably end the video here. No, I'll let him finish the sentence.
So I agree that we do need to have a discussion about like, okay, the definitions of fascism and the Giovanni Gentile versus the Nazi biological fascism and all that stuff, or biological racism and all that. And it's just like, that's what I'm generally interested in. And I'm in lawyer mode now defending myself, even though I don't even know what I'm arguing. I'm telling you.
Yeah, let's take a step back.
So we can talk about Charlie Kirk. We can talk about Charlie Kirk.
Well, let's take a step back. So I kind of view the conversation in different ways, right? Like, okay. I'm personally interested.
I noticed that. It's just like Richard Dawkins and Jordan Peterson talking.
Sure, yeah. I kind of see there's a conversation about like, what is fascism? Is it being misapplied by the left or by Democrats or by this or that?
Sure.
That is a conversation that fundamentally relies on what the meaning of the term fascism is and how people mean it when they use it. That's number one. Like, so the conversation about is the label being misapplied fundamentally relies on there being some cashing out of.
All right. Well, they go deeper into that conversation. I thought that was an interesting conversation nonetheless. So I'm going to end it there.